got it on the right microphone. Can you hear me? Hello, hello. Yes. Yeah, killer music. Oops. Stop the music. Alexa, stop music. That's better. Tell her to shut up. Okay. How is everybody this evening?
Yeah, good on you.
Doing good?
Yeah, marvelous.
Now, video, of course, is optional on this call. You don't have to have your video on, so you can switch it off if you want. You don't want to get distracted. But it's good to see all the familiar faces joining us. As you know, this morning was the first cohort for the Southern Hemisphere, so this is my second time today going through this. Anyhow, I see it's 8 o'clock, so it is time to get the show on the road. I'm going to, 1 second, just got to get my Stream Deck set up here right. And then we'll crank into this session. Okay, we'll go there, we'll go there, we'll go there. And I will hit this, and that mutes everybody. Well, maybe not. Thought it would, but it didn't. So 1 second, I'm going to do that manually. Where is it? Okay, I don't have it. Anyhow, just let me know if we are ready to go in the comments. Jump in the comments, give us a chat. Let me know if you're ready to go. The Kiwi voice. It's Kiwi, all right. Chuck that over to one side there. Let's get my desktop set up, people. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Just give me a, yep, you're good if you can see my screen in the chat. Yeah, okay, cool. Let's get the show on the road then. First thing I need to validate is how we're recording. Yep, we're recording. Cool, good to go then. Let's get underway. So first of all, everybody, use chat. Chat in the session is going to be the way to kind of carry the conversation. So if I say something that resonates with you, or you've got questions, or you've got experience around what I'm covering today, chuck it in the chat so you can share with each other. I'm not going to really monitor the chat from this point forward. I'm going to mute it down. Also, can someone please just check the Facebook group and see if anyone's struggling to get in. If they're struggling to get in, just copy the URL for this session. You should be able to see it there in your interface somewhere, and pop it into the chat group if no one's been able to work out the calendar files that I updated. A couple of other things. I'll take questions at the end if we have time. So at that Q&A time, just jump on, unmute yourself, and ask your question. I'm not looking at any of the questions that have been typed up. Take notes through this. Make sure you're prepared to take down notes, particularly around what things that you need to work into your life career, what actions you need to take to move forward. And then the other thing, help others. When I'm talking about help others in that chat session, if you have insights into what other people may be asking, at that point, feel free to engage at that point. With that, I'll just chuck that over to one side, get my PowerPoint all ready, and we will get underway. Okay, first of all, I want to talk to you about this chap here, Warren Buffett. Because this whole topic is on communications, I really want to give you examples of people that have learned to communicate effectively and kind of what do they say on the topic. And the two key areas I'm going to focus on is written communication and verbal communication. And, you know, Warren Buffett, one of the things he said is that early in his career, he was terrified of speaking, not just publicly, but let alone just in front of a small group of people. And so he was discussing with some business students that effective public speaking raises a person's value by 50% instantly. And you can go out and find the research on this. He goes, in my office, and I'm quoting from him here, in my office, you will not see the degree that I got from University of Nebraska. You'll not see the master's degree I got from Columbia University. But you'll see the award certificate I got from Dale Carnegie course. And Dale Carnegie course was a course to teach you to public speak. And so Buffett said that he was series called Becoming Warren Buffett. Now, this is one of the top 5 most wealthiest people in the world that really, his career has been very business focused. And what he is saying here is that the most important skill in his career that he could have learned was to become a public speaker. And I find that interesting. He was asked, what habits did you cultivate in your 20s and 30s that you set the foundation for success? And he pointed it once again to learning to public speak. He said the unusual person will jump out, not because they have a high IQ of 100 or anything like that. You will jump out much more than you can anticipate if you get really comfortable with public speaking. It's an asset that lasts you 50 to 60 years, and it's a liability if you don't like doing it. So just let that sink in for a second. He's saying that this skill, that if you learned it in your 20s and 30s, or whatever age you are, in my case, a bit more than that, if you learned the skill of public speaking, no matter what career you had, no matter what role that you had socially or commercially, family, etc., this one skill could reap you benefits for 50 to 60 years. Now that is pretty high praise, and therefore, for me, obviously it sets it up as a very key or important skill to develop in your career. And it's not the technology, it's not the stuff that we learn or the skills that we learn to do our jobs. This here is a soft skill that will transform your life. And I know that's a pretty bold statement for me to say that'll transform your life, but let me tell you a story and the importance of finding your voice. Across my career, I once, many years ago, well over 16 years ago, I was a trainer, an IT trainer. I used to teach web design and other courses, and it was in an adult education facility. So in other words, I taught business people when the web was coming about, how, strategies around web design, things like that. That's how I kind of got into IT. This is back around me. I started off in NT4 days, did a lot with Linux, things like that. So we're talking about a long time ago. That's when CRMs didn't have any mouse interaction. They, in my case, was a FoxPro database. So, a long time ago. So I was working for this company, and the boss of the company said, listen, can you set up a class, and we're going to get students from local schools in, so 13, 14, 15-year-olds. And I was like, oh, okay, not used to teaching young people, and how young people can be quite lippy, and they don't care, if you like, about adults so much. So I was like, okay, it's going to be a challenge, but let's do it. So I had all these students come into class, and what happened is that one student, he was student number 12. I knew that quite clearly because during the week he hacked a website of a dental surgery. Remember, I was in New Zealand, and he hacked a dental surgery in the US, and it basically put up a replacement page that said, IT administrator, this is student number 12, and you should update your security on your website. And he pinged that to me through Messenger. Windows used to have this desktop application or service that you could run that you could send messages to computers. And I was like, okay, man, I've not come across somebody so young that can kind of work his way around a few tricks online and things like that. And so this kid, 14 years old he was, I saw a potential in him. And what happened is that I let him come along to training after that point for free. He learned to become a .NET developer, specialize in C#. And the first CRM that I implemented, he helped me implement it. And that was CRM 1.2. Anyhow, I wanted to coach him and mentor him in growing his skills. And so one of the things I said, you need to learn to become an effective communicator. And so I said, one of the ways to get really good on a subject is to teach a subject, because you've got an audience and they're going to query you and challenge you if you get it wrong. And so, but the guy, his voice wasn't above a whisper, it was just very difficult to hear him. He was a brilliant mind, but he had struggled to communicate it. Well, through a process of mentoring and teaching him how to publicly speak, even one of the things got him to do is scream into his pillow at night what he was teaching, so he would learn to project his voice. Long story short, he's now the CEO of a very successful company in New Zealand. He's an MVP now as well in Microsoft Business Applications, and he's become very successful because although he became a strong developer, he learned how to communicate effectively and share his ideas, and has gone on to be very successful. Incidentally, he's also my nephew now because he ended up marrying my niece. So yeah, that's a story I like to tell of someone that I saw transformed by learning to become an effective communicator. I was talking to my mate, Jerry Weinstock, and he's another MVP over in the US, and he said this about developers, because I've done a lot of research about putting this course together. I didn't want it to be just my ideas and experience. And he said this: why is it that many developers think that the only way to get out of feeling like they're just code monkeys is to become a solution architect? Isn't there a better path for them? How does improving their communication skills make them feel less like they're in a small cube with projects just being shoved at them along with a slice of pizza and another soft drink? Now, I bet you a few of you smiled about that, right? You would think, that's not too far from the truth. Jerry has got his own successful dynamics practice and has so for 11 odd years now. And it was an observation that he made of the developers, etc., in his team and wider in the community feedback he had got. And I see so many developers that have brilliant ideas. They are very creative and can make software do amazing things, but often they don't have the ability to communicate to others their ideas and the potential of what they're doing. And so if you're like, having the amazing idea is not worth anything if you can't communicate it to others. And communication is really about others receiving that skill that you're talking about, receiving that idea, that concept, and getting behind it and taking that forward. I want to share two quotes with you, and then I'm going to reveal to you who the author is that said these. And he said, and this is from a book I read just last year. He said, remember, in the 21st century knowledge economy that we all live in, no machine, no software, no robot can replicate your ideas. But if you cannot sell your ideas persuasively, it doesn't matter. Now, just let that sink in for a moment. You can have those great ideas, but he's talking about, like he says, sell, but really we could say that if you can't communicate your ideas persuasively, it doesn't matter how good your ideas are. He went on to say this: developing original ideas and communicating those ideas effectively is the single greatest skill you can build today to own your future. Once again, that's a pretty powerful claim. So where did this come from? This guy came from a guy called Carmen Galileo. Now, I don't know if many of you have heard him, but he is an author that I read 3 books of his last year. The first one was called Talk Like TED. Now, there's a predecessor to this book, and it's where he analyzes the speaking style of Apple founder Steve Jobs. And, why was Steve Jobs so brilliant at presenting a concept, whether it was the original iPhone, the iPods and the iPhone, etc., and onwards? He had a superb way of communicating publicly that engaged people. Play it forward. He basically analyzed thousands and thousands of TED Talks. The TED Talks that got, millions of views after they had been published online, and what made them unique, what made them different. And he identified 9 key areas in public speaking that you need to learn. And this is a key indicator here about when you look at yourself and you go, but I am introverted, I am shy, I don't like speaking in front of people. Often I have found that's a story that we may have grown up with, and public speaking is considered one of the most scariest things to do in the world. So I don't take it lightly. But what I have found is that if you can learn the tools of public speaking, you can take into check, if you like, that fear. And then as you exercise what I call your learning muscles over time, and in this case, specifically in the area of communication, you can develop a confidence to speak and to communicate effectively, that your audience receives what you're saying and it moves them to take action or apply what you've taught, or emotionally moves them to take action. So public speaking is all about learning the skills, learning the patterns, learning the methodologies, if you like, of public speaking. It is learnable. Most people, and even the great orators we've seen, I'm going to give some examples shortly, that we think are amazing public speakers, they didn't just wake up one day or grow up that way being public speakers. They did it by exercising their learning muscles, and they learned to become effective public speakers. I highly recommend this book. In fact, it's in the assignment list that I've sent out for you to look at. The second one that followed up this was called The Storyteller's Secret, and how important stories are in creating connections with people. People identify with stories because they put themselves in that position. There's got a big difference between stories and then data and facts, right? Our brain connects with it differently. And in this book, he shows you how to tell a story to create connection and really connect with people, so much so that their brains almost become in sync with you as the communicator or as the speaker. Why am I saying, well, public speaking is something you need to learn? You're like, well, I'm never going to be a public speaker. I don't want to be a public speaker. I don't want to do that. Listen, the skills that you get in public speaking affect every part of your life. I first started going to public speaker training. Where was I? It was before I even got into IT, so it's over 20 years ago. It's a long time ago. And I remember going along and, you know, I wouldn't say that I've been a shy person. You know, I grew up in a family of 7 on a farm, and, you know, with 7 kids in the family, you always had to defend your own position. Otherwise, you just get railroaded. And so what happened is that I went along to this training, and I remember this guy coming in, and he almost cried when he introduced himself. He was so afraid of public speaking, totally gripped with fear. And then I remember him 6 months later, after going through once a week, attending this training, and he was a different person. Honestly, I couldn't believe it was the same person. The way he held himself when he walked into the room, the way he communicated with other people and introduced himself and engaged, he drew people to him. And all that had happened in a 6-month period of going to training once a week in a regular pattern of exercising his speaking muscle, he found the ability to become a very effective communicator outside public speaking. Hence why I say, and why I showed Warren Buffett there, is the importance of public speaking will absolutely transform every part of your life. Your home life, your family life, your professional life, every part of your life will be changed if you learn to become an effective speaker. The third book that he put out, and he put this book out just about 6 months, might have been 8 months ago. I read it towards the latter half of last year, called, you know, The Communication Secrets to Getting 5 Stars, you know, from good to great. I don't know if you've done any user group type presentations for Summit and things, and you get surveyed, you know, on a scale of 1 to 5. And how, you know, this book here, what I love about it, excuse me, just had dinner. What I love about it is that this book drills into very much at where we are in the world right now. He talks a lot about AI and the fear people have around artificial intelligence is going to take their jobs. You know, we've seen stats up to 60% of the workforce in the next 5 years is going to get displaced because of artificial intelligence. But the thing is, what artificial intelligence can't do yet is come up with ideas and to communicate those ideas effectively. And so therefore I'm saying this is your secret skill to future-proof yourself forever. If you learn to become an effective public speaker, combined with your skills and technology, like most of you are, you're going to set yourself onto a very successful career path. You're going to set yourself well above your peers around you if you excel in this one area. So how do you get good at it? It comes down to exercising what I call your speaking muscles. And I'm very big lately on stop doing one-off bits of training like once every 3 months. If you would never go to the gym and train once every 3 months, do a big Saturday session, work out all your muscles and go away and go, right, I'm done for 6 months, right? You just wouldn't do it. Everyone, if you said, I'm a fit person, I'm into fitness, no one would believe you if that was the attitude you took. Yet, that's the way we do training in IT. That's the way we do training in Microsoft Biz Apps. We go along, we do a course, we do one day, and it's kind of like, that's meant to carry us forward. I suggest that you need to set aside a minimum of time every day of the week, at least 5 days a week, that you are exercising your learning muscle, that you're learning what's next, that you're staying alert to the changes that are happening in our industry and with our technology, because you're future-proofing yourself no matter what comes down the track. So when I say exercise your speaking muscles, here are 8 areas of where weekly engagement and learning to public speak has these positive effects. So it improves your public speaking skills, it builds leadership skills, it maximizes your potential, enjoy unlimited personal growth. You get to network with the other people also learning. And I love this one here. You get to practice writing speeches and presenting in a group setting. You gain competitive advantage in the workplace, and you build self-confidence and self-awareness. And that last one there, self-awareness, is so important, because when you can publicly speak and look at the audience and see, am I connecting or am I actually putting up a barrier? It gives you direct feedback that you can alter where you're going with a thought, with an idea. And self-awareness, once again, affects you in business and family and every part of your life. It's so important. So where do you get this amazing thing? Anyone think I'm trying to sell it to you, but I'm trying to present to you the importance of public speaking. Read the books, but reading the books will only give you the theory. At the end of the day, to be an effective public speaker, you must speak. You must get practice at speaking. And so what I suggest you do is join Toastmasters. So as you can see, 357,000 members around the world, 16,000 odd cities, 143 countries. Now, from memory, there's only around 200 countries in the world, so that's pretty much the globe covered. I'm pretty sure that your country probably is represented in this list. One of your jobs on your first assignment this coming week is to make sure you go along. It doesn't cost anything. You can attend a Toastmasters up to 2 or 3 times, depending on the local chapter. Go along and experience a Toastmasters, and then decide whether this is something that you want to take serious. Remember, Warren Buffett said 50% uptake, right? The boost it would have for you. So I highly recommend it. In fact, I can't recommend it enough. This is how serious I take this. Last week was 1 year since I arrived in London. I arrived in London. I flew in on Thursday. Do you know that on the Friday, I enrolled in Toastmasters? And I've been going to Toastmasters pretty much every Monday night in London, unless I'm out of the country or due to work commitments cannot attend. Otherwise, I attend. I went this week. I delivered a speech this week. I delivered on the Pomodoro technique, which is a time management technique I used to get through boring work, how I manage boring work. And I won Best Speech of the Night. So is it worth it? You know, people say, why do you need to go to Toastmasters? You can speak okay. I believe so passionately about public speaking that it's a lifetime skill that you must constantly be developing. So I want to work out my muscles every week when it comes to public speaking. I go along, I get involved, I speak as frequently as I can. And of course, this is not the only place. You know, there's lots of user groups, local user groups that you can go along and learn to publicly speak. And if there's not a local user group, set one up. Why not, right? Why not lead that and set it up in your area? People think it's tricky to set up user groups. It's not that difficult. Happy to help if that's something you want to do wherever you are located in the world. As I said, I can't recommend enough, as I close out this little section here on public speaking, the importance of all the things that I'm going to cover under communication. Public speaking is the most important because it'll affect, as I said, every part of your life. But you have to act and do it, right? Nobody can speak on your behalf. It doesn't count, right? You have to get up there and actually learn yourself. Okay, let's switch gears. Let's look at written communication. So if the pinnacle of communication is verbal, the one layer below it, and it's only slightly below it because in business, right, we often have to do stuff in written format. And so written communication is the next area that I kind of want to drill into. And I want to show you this quote here from Anne Handley. Now, Anne Handley is an author, written books, and I'm going to mention her book in a moment. But this is what she said about good writing. Good writing serves the reader, not the writer. It's not self-indulgent. Good writing anticipates the question the readers might have as they're reading a piece, and it answers them. Right? Really powerful stuff there. Now, this is, of course, a writing for an audience or writing for somebody else, communicating via the written form. Now, there are times where you'll write that it might be just 100% personal. It's not intended, you know, like writing in your diary for somebody else. For me, and this is right from I was in my teens, Whenever I have had tragedy in my life, somebody has died that I've known, killed in a car accident, committed suicide, died of cancer, any of these type of scenarios, I have found for me that how I process this is that I write. Now, I write in a way that's not for public sharing. I write just for me. So maybe it is a little self-indulgent in that case, but it's my way of getting my emotions out and if you like, addressing the emotional state that I'm going through. So writing can really tap into a part of you like nothing else and really connect with the way it allows you to articulate your thought. But of course, when we look at it from a business perspective, it has massive impact in business because often it's what you're writing that is being picked up and engaged with. I'll give you an example. About 6 weeks ago, I think it was, I started writing 2 blog posts a week. Set a goal that, I want to, for the next 12 months, do a minimum of 2 blog posts a week. And so blogging takes time. It takes, for me, I have to refine my thinking. I have to research. There's a lot of effort. It takes hours to write a blog post, that's of good quality. And so I'm using it to effectively communicate things that I'm seeing not being communicated in the Microsoft business application space. So I tend not to blog about the things like, this is what's new about playbooks, and that's only top of mind because I probably will do a post on playbooks because they've improved it so much recently in Dynamics. But I often do stuff that's around the industry, that's business focused, that type of thing. I know a lot about the technology, but I feel heaps of people out there are really nailing the technology discussion. So I'm not going to just add on top of that. I want to try to add something different. So this writing experience is blowing me away. Like I've been podcasting now for a fair whack of time, right? I've got a bunch of followers that are on that podcast. I get engagement, but since I have started writing my blog, my traffic has over doubled to my website monthly. Like it has just gone through the roof. I'm blown away I'm not a big reader of blog content. I'm a big reader of books. I read a lot of books, but I am blown away that people obviously do read blog posts because the traffic to my website has gone massively up and I'm getting this engagement, comments, etc. on blog posts. So written communication in our industry is extremely important. As a professional, you need to write proposals, you need to document requirements, you need to do presentations, which generally will have some form of written communication in it, emails, chats, and then handwritten notes, right? These are all the different ways we communicate that we're generally typing or something is written down as part of that process. So as you can see, after learning to speak effectively, the need to write documentation or write proposals, presentations, emails, etc. is critically important. We've moved to things like, Teams, and therefore our chat's a lot more, in line. Emails are becoming less, or, in my life, I'm not using email as much. I'm using chat sessions, but it's still important to communicate effectively because often emotion, etc., is not communicated through text when we're in the cut and thrust of being a business professional. So to understand how your message is being received from a written perspective is very important to gain that self-awareness and to become skilled person in writing. Now, people ask me, are there templates, are there documents, etc.? And I thought I'd just chuck this in there. Microsoft came out with SureStep a long, long time ago, and it's a methodology. Some hate it, some love it. Microsoft Consulting Services, this is a big part of what they do. I tried to use it in the various business I've been in and found it overkill personally. But what is awesome about this is that across diagnostics, analysis, design, development, deployment, and operation, there's a whole bunch of templates, structured documents around gathering requirements and SOPs and things like that. And so it's a great starting point if you need documentation. The other thing is always be on the lookout for other good documentation, other good written pieces that you can use and add to. Learn the written styles that are effective in our industry. The way to communicate in writing is an effective skill. I don't know where you can get a copy of SureStep nowadays, but I'm sure it's still around. I understand it's been updated recently, but it's worth tapping into all the Word, Excel, and PowerPoint templates that have been put together over the last 10 or so years around this. Let me tell you about a few tools that have saved my life so many times. And these tools, let me just see where I'm at. The biggest tool here for me is Grammarly. Grammarly, I mean, I think I've been using it for 3 to 4 years now, maybe. And, you know, Grammarly is so much more than a spell checker. Yes, it does spell checking, but sorry, I just lost my there you go. But it's also like the grammar thing is a big deal for me. You know, I get messed up on things like which there to use, and it's not that I'm going consciously which there should I use, THEIR or THERE as an example. It's that as I'm typing, I'm slightly dyslexic as well. It just comes out whatever my fingers typed out, right? And the beauty of Grammarly is it corrects that type of stuff, or it gives you warnings. And if your sentence structure is all up the wop, it allows you to intercept that, correct it. And of course, it's got all this other, you know, genre-specific writing styles as well. So if you're doing very professional or legal-based writing, you can put those check marks in the settings and it will conform to it. It's been an absolute lifesaver for me. I am not good at spelling. And I haven't been. I didn't learn to read till I was 12 years old. My mother, just before sending me to high school, realized I couldn't read. Once again, brought up in a rural community where education wasn't, if you like, a focus. And so I was taken back to like the level 1 when you're 5 years old, starting at school, and was taught at 12 how to read. The ball is red. The banana is yellow, you know? And so I didn't learn to read effectively from a young age. And that, of course, then affected my ability to write and spell. And so in business, like for me, I'm like, that's a thing that's doesn't work necessarily well for me, but I'm not ever going to let it hold me back. And when great tools like Grammarly and of course spell checker, you know, sets the right settings, etc. within the application, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, that type of thing is set correctly, it can be a great enhancer and make you look better in your writing than what you perhaps naturally are. Love it. Computer-assisted writing to correct all my mistakes. And I think this technology is just going to get better and better and better at helping you construct sentences that are meaningful and read correctly from the people engaging. Anyone think I'm trying to sell you this product? I just am such a firm believer, and it saved me so many times. Now I'm independent. You know, I don't have people to check my work like I used to. You know, if I was going to send out a very important email to a CEO or something, I'd always have one of my staff member check it because, hey, they knew I just couldn't spell the same myself. But Grammarly has been kind of that savior. Still not 100%, but it's a massive tool and well worth learning. Anyhow, back to Anne Hadley. Here's a book I recommend you take a look at. Your go-to guide to creating ridiculously good content, writing. And she's got here kind of 6 things to consider, to ask yourself when you're writing anything. And really these 6 questions should ultimately become habits that your brain automatically understands them. And so as you're writing, you're not going through a formula as such, but they're built in. Why am I creating this? What's the objective? What is my key take on the subject or issue? What's my point of view? And finally, the critical, so what? Like, is this really moving the dial? Has someone already written a piece that's just about the same as this? You know, or it doesn't really matter. You know, who are you trying to reach? The people you're trying to reach, will this connect? And so in our industry, we have this massive opportunity to hone our written skills. And one of the ways to do that is in blog posts, writing blog content. But of course, that will only help you or aid you in writing more effective inside the company that you work for, or the company you might own or organization you work with. Okay, those are the 2 kind of key pillars I wanted to focus on as part of this first cohort. Now I want to switch up to communication in the cut and thrust of work life and what we're doing every day. And the first one is around customer communication. And as I put this part of the presentation together, the cohort together, I went out and asked a bunch of business professionals that I have known have worked in Microsoft business applications for some time. And I got their feedback around what do they see is good communication from consultants and business folks in the Microsoft Biz App community. And this is the first thing they said around engaging with customers. You need to inspire confidence. When a customer is working with you, You need to inspire confidence. This is what I say. I've seen so many people that are very technically knowledgeable, but they don't inspire confidence. And let's have a look at the examples I mean. When somebody asks you a question, how do you respond to that question? How do you respond when you don't know the answer? How do you respond when somebody else in your team might have the answer, but you don't have it? And so here's a couple of things to consider. Instead of saying, I don't know, say, I'll get back to you, right? You've got Google. You know how to go out and search the answer. But so many times I've seen myself, consultants go, oh, I don't know. Does that inspire confidence with the customer? Rather than say no, they'll say, rather than say no, say, here are your options. Never lie. I've so many times seen consultants feel that they need to have the answer and therefore will fudge something together, and the smarter people in the room know they're fudging it. You don't need to do that. Does it inspire confidence? Never lie. As I say, never lie. Nobody's going to, query you saying, I don't know, let me take a note and let me get back to you. They all think that's a good, diligent individual working as part of the team. So consider in your conversations, in your body language, are you inspiring confidence? Remember these things. Be honest, right? It's better to admit you don't know something than to tell a lie. The client does not necessarily know what they want or the implications of what they are asking for. Once again, I've been in sessions with my staff and I've seen customers ask for this feature and that feature and this field and that field and these forms and that form and these views and these dashboards. And I've seen consultants just go, yes, it can do it. And the consultant goes from the point of view, yes, it can do these things, but is it the right thing to do? The customer doesn't know our technology like we know our technology, and they are coming to us for our expertise. And it's our job to be the expert, not to be the pushover, not to be the yes person. It's everything is possible. Yes, we can build you a new Titanic in Dynamics. No, that's not what we're here to do. We're here to be so knowledgeable about our technology that when we engage a customer and the subject matter expert in an industry, we can model what they're asking for against our technology. Not sit down with a shopping list and say, what do you want? We will build it all, right? It comes down to being an effective communicator and inspiring confidence. Be proactive. This is such an important point here. Problems don't tend to get better with time. Bring up risks early. I'm really talking here in projects. I was in a project in Melbourne, Australia, and this project was a multi-year project, and I had a PM and a senior architect on it who weren't strong when it came to pushing back on customer requests. Needless to say, that project didn't end up going very well because there'd been problems in the project that had not been spoken about, not been addressed by my team members for months. And you know what? Just like a snowball rolling downhill, they get larger and larger and larger. I have never seen a problem get resolved on a project by doing nothing about it, by not voicing it. The sooner that you identify a problem and communicate it to the people that can change it, the better. I'll tell you some problems that I've seen. I've seen that the dynamics in the customer team, staff come in and they're in conflict with each other. Not even in my delivery team, but in their team. And that can totally disrail a project. So if you don't then highlight that and say, listen, there's conflict here. I'm going to call out this conflict and it's going to affect the project if we don't address it. But what happens? You leave the conflict going and the conflict builds and builds and builds. And then you have a problem. And of course, the customer, they'll never say the problem was because of them. They'll always say it's because of the people that are not them, the other people, the people running the project, the IT department, the admins did it. It'll never be their fault for it, but it's important. Never let a problem not get addressed while it's still a baby. The next is over-communicate. I have never seen a scenario where a customer said, you're talking to me too much. You're keeping me too updated. You're keeping me too much in the loop. I don't want to know. It doesn't happen, right? So you really cannot over communicate if you want to inspire confidence with customers. Now, when I talk about customers, if you're a partner, your customers are, of course, people that you're implementing the technology for. If you work inside a company and you're in the IT department, your customers, the other staff, the other members of your team, or your customers' customers. And of course, if you're Microsoft, we're your customer. So that when you think about it, are you inspiring confidence by the way you're communicating? The next area of communication is around team communication. And it's extremely important that your relationships are core to your job. So the relationship you have with your team members, not those necessarily an authority above you or authority or that you're an authority over, but those team members that you interact with every day, those relationships are core to your job and sometimes your career advancement. And so it's important to look at the relationships that you have in work and understand, are my relationships conducive to a positive environment, or are they toxic? Are they not going where they should be going? And so I've got this little matrix here that I took from a book, which I'll share with you in a moment. And the book is called Radical Candor, and it's written by a lady who is senior management in Facebook, as well as the other company was Apple. So over in San Francisco, Silicon Valley area, and she wrote this book around communication, tells a lot of the stories of her career in there. And if we look at these two axes here, on the horizontal, we have challenge directly. In other words, if you had a scale of no challenging on the left to maximum challenge on the right, that you're confident when there's an issue that you can go in and address it, that's being challenged directly, or you don't address it. You just let it go. You're like, I look the other way. I don't want to address this problem. It's not my problem. I don't want to engage. And then on the vertical, we have their care personally. And the thing is, for radical candor to work, for the ability to communicate effectively and positively, you need to be very strong to care personally. And what do I mean by care personally? You've got to have the best interests in place for the person you're communicating to. And it can't be the first time you meet them that you express this caring personally for them. Right? It's got to be built up over time, over weeks, over months, that they know that in the conversations I've had for you, that you really are interested in them as individuals and in the best outcome for them, right? And then when you combine this caring for personally, when you see things that are a problem or need to be addressed that you need to communicate on, you can challenge them directly because they know you have their and your heart in their best interest. That's radical candor. That's what we should be aiming for in our families and in every type of relationship we have. So what sits outside that? So if you care personally for somebody, but notice the segment there, ruinous empathy. In other words, this person might be a friend. They might be in a business position, business colleague, but they might be a good friend. You might socialize with them outside of work, that type of thing. So you know they're doing something wrong, or they're making career limiting moves, or they may be addressing other employees in an inappropriate way, or any number of things, right? Because they're your friend, you might care for them personally, but you won't challenge them directly. And that's called ruinous empathy. And one of the examples she gives about a financial controller that just kept making wrong decisions, but because he was a personal friend of hers, the other team members could see it, that this guy needed to be addressed, and she didn't because it was a friend. And in the end, the company went bankrupt because of it. Cared personally, wouldn't challenge directly. Down in the bottom corner, manipulative insincerity. I'm sure you've come across people in your workforce that fit this profile, that they are out to manipulate everybody. They do it quietly behind the scenes. They're insincere. They don't care about the other person at all. And of course, they'll never challenge directly because they manipulate from behind the scenes. I hope nobody is in that quadrant there. And then the other one is obnoxious aggression. I'm sure you've come across this person. The person that absolutely flies off their handle when things don't go their way at work. They get angry. They what I call chuck their toys. If it's not going their way, everybody's going to know it's not going their way. So they will challenge everybody directly. They will berate them. They will belittle them. They will make them feel like they are nothing because they do challenge directly. But on the flip side, they absolutely have zero care for anybody, and that's why they can be so abrasive. Now, when I read this book over a year ago now, it just blew me away I wish I had learned this so much earlier in my career. I've seen so many people that I could picture across my career in this quadrant. And the obnoxious aggression, I had one salesperson, I was a sales manager at the time, and he totally bullied another individual. He was absolutely obnoxious. In the end, I just said, mate, you're out of here. He was the top salesperson, but I walked him because he didn't care about anybody else. And of course, he challenged everybody directly in anything he didn't like. Learn the skill now, learn it while you're young in your career, and you'll communicate effectively. I also like in this book from Kim, which is, I'm going to show you the book in the next slide. She goes, a good rule of thumb of any relationship is to leave 3 unimportant things unsaid each day. Now, for those of you that are married, you will know the importance of this, right? For there's times at work where you don't need to point out someone else's faults or bring up a past indiscretion of somebody else's. For good relationships, consider each day, leave 3 things unsaid, and the world will go a lot smoother. Anyhow, let's look at this book, Radical Candor by Kim Scott. Now, it says to become a kick-ass boss, and I believe everybody in our life, we're leaders of some sort, okay? And what I love about this, be a kick-ass boss without losing your humanity. And you see Sheryl Sandberg's wrote the comment there, and she's one of the top people at Facebook. Read this book now at this point in your career. Really reread it if you need to really sink in and understand, is your communication style, is it in that top right quadrant? Or do you find yourself from time to time in other parts of that quadrant because you might care deeply for the person, but don't want to, rock the boat, so to speak, and address the issues. And of course, hopefully, none of you are operating below the line, so to speak, in this scenario. Read this book. It'll be well worth it for your career and your communications. The next is upline communication. I've coached a bunch of people around upline communication, particularly even when it comes to negotiating your employment contract, whether it's for a new job or a pay increase. There's skills that you need to learn when you're in a position that the person is an authority above you. And there's a book I'm going to recommend in 2 slides' time that will really impact your ability to communicate upline. It's a book on negotiation. And I think, once again, it should be taught in schools, what is covered in this book, because it affects how you work within your team, how you communicate upline with management, and how you communicate to subordinates, how you communicate with customers, how you communicate with people that you buy goods from. I'm going to tell you a story in a moment about somebody that was on my first in 2018 when I first run this 90-day mentoring challenge. One lady in the Facebook group responded back from Perth, Australia, and I'll tell her story of the impact this book had on her life. But before we go there, I just want to talk to you about another book I highly recommend, and this is by Chip and Dan Heath. And I read this book maybe 8-9 years ago. And once again, it was one of these books I can even picture where I was when I was reading it. It's so impactful because a light came on in my mind. And they said, basically, in communicating in any decision that you make in life where you're engaging with other people or even negotiating with yourself, there are 3 things in play. And the metaphor they used is the rider, which is your brain. So the rider is, in this case, on the elephant. The elephant is your emotions. It's the thing that ultimately wins, So like I go, man, I'm gonna lose weight, and my brain goes, I'm gonna lose weight, and then I go past the McDonald's, or I see a nice ice cream, and the elephant, the emotional part of me, the bit that's kind of running behind the scenes on autopilot, like it fights with the rider. But who's bigger, the rider or the elephant? And then the last bit is the path. You're going down a path. And so do you make your path easy to follow, or do you make it torturous? So if I use that example again, is that if I rid my house of all the junk food, the lollies, the chips, and the things like that, if I don't go and walk past McDonald's or any of those type of places, what I'm doing is making the path straighter. I'm reducing the risk of sticking with the goal that my brain came up with of losing weight. That's one example. The other one I'll give you is that, You know, I've been in a company that every Friday you had to fill in your timesheets. Has your timesheets been done? The emails would come out. Have the timesheets been done? Fill in your timesheets. If you don't fill in your timesheets, you're going to be called in for a speaking to type thing. And the problem was, in their case, it's not that the rider and the elephant weren't on board. The path was torturous. To create or enter your timesheet, there was no mobile input. It was all on old InfoPath forms. So you had to be on a desktop computer, and so many people were becoming mobile workers. They had to get a laptop open or something like that, and then log through 2 or 3 screens and start entering, you know, the projects and the timesheets. So the path was torturous, and so they kept berating people. But the path was so torturous that often the elephant won, and it went in the direction of least resistance. I'm going to play a video for you now. I'll just put the audio up on my computer so it can get through the microphone. Just finding my mouse. And this video is done by Chip and Dan Heath, and it really illustrates this point. It's something that you probably want to come back to over and over again for it to sink in and see how it can really impact your life.
Psychologists know that there are 2 systems in our brains, the rational system and the emotional system. Jonathan Haidt, who's a psychologist at NYU, came up with a great analogy for these 2 systems. He said, think of your brain as a human rider atop an elephant. The rider represents the rational system.
Sorry, I stopped the video.
The part of us that plans and problem solves. The rider might do some analyzing and decide, hey, I want to go that way. But it's the elephant, representing the emotional system, that provides the power for the journey. The rider can try to lead the elephant or drag the elephant, but if these 2 ever disagree, who would you bet on? The elephant has a 6 tons that makes adopting new behaviors very hard. If you want this duo to head a new direction, you also need to think about the path, which represents the external environment. This duo is more likely to complete a journey if you can shorten the distance and remove any obstacles in their way. So bottom line, if you want to lead change, you've got to do 3 things. Give direction to the rider, knowledge of how to get to the destination. You've got to motivate the elephant, which means tapping into emotion. And finally, you need to shape the path to allow for easy progress. That's how change happens.
Okay, so you get the idea there, is that in so many of the scenarios that we're in our work life, we're communicating with other people, and where the external influences, that path that, you know, go do this, go learn that, fill in a timesheet. How are you addressing that path and making it simple? I'll give you a simple example again this week. One of my staff members sent to me and said, I finished doing the edit on this document. Oh, sorry, on the document you requested. And in my mind, I was like, what document did I request? I can't remember. Where is the link to the document so I can just click on it and go, yes, excellent, it's done. See what I'm saying about how easy is it is for the person that's sending, if they thought about how the person is receiving this communication, would change their way, would communicate a lot more. I'll just mute down my audio again as people come and go. So that book I recommend, Switch by Dan Heath. Once again, it was a book that changed my career dramatically. The next is this one here, Never Split the Difference. Negotiate as your life depended on it, written by a former FBI negotiator who's a business consultant. Incredible, incredible, powerful book. One of the girls on the cohorts, when I did this last, and she said, after reading this book, it totally, I can't even think of the word I'm trying to say, transformed the way she actually ran her engagement workshops. And that she used one of the techniques in here is pausing and delaying engagement to give the other party time to think and articulate their thoughts. And she was saying how she ended up, you know, getting a scope of work for 6 months from a client that had never in the past given more than 4 weeks at any time just by using techniques. She then went on to, a couple of weeks later, she once again jumped into the Facebook group and told a story of buying a new car and how she used the techniques once again in this book, something that was totally foreign to her. She would never have done it in the past. And she said, and they dropped the price dramatically by this type of engagement, or by the technique she learned in here. And one of the key ones, again, not speaking, let the other person talk them down. I've always had a saying, he who speaks first loses in negotiation so many times. And this comes to do with working with your boss, negotiating your income, salary, that type of thing, and also negotiating requirements with customers. So well worth a read of this. I want to talk about English as a second language. And I know a lot of you come from different places around the world. And this was, followed up with questions this morning, is that often people with English as their second language are not confident. And they, whether they've been put down and growing up and say your English is not good, or they've had situations where people are not being happy with English. But what I can say is I interview a lot of people on my podcast. I deal with multinationals from all different countries of the world all the time. And generally, I've never found a scenario where English has ever been the thing holding the individual back. Their perception that it is might be, but the actual English is fine. I had a guy on the call this morning, and he said, listen, I struggle with this all the time. I feel my English is not good enough. And his articulation was absolutely perfect. So often it's the stories in our head. Don't be afraid. You can speak languages that I couldn't even begin to start communicating with you in your language, and you've taken the time to learn English. Be confident in your knowledge, and don't let not being an effective English communicator hold you back. There are courses, etc., out there, of course, that can help in these areas, but don't ever let it be the thing that stops you putting your foot forward and communicating your ideas. I put this diagram together, and I find it's a very good way to consider the forms of communication that you're going to use. You can see there on the left, more effective to less effective, and then a richer medium to a leaner medium. So what's the best form of communication? Face-to-face is always top of the tree, right? Because you get to see the body emotion, the tone of voice, the eyes, the ears, you get to hear all that. And so communication is effective at this level. Second, video conferencing. If you're doing conference calls with any of your team members, customers, anybody, and you're using Skype or Teams or whatever tool you're using, make sure you turn your video on, even if other people don't do it. It will totally change your conversations within a couple of months. If you're in management position, require it that all your meetings are conducted with video conferencing. Telephone gets a little less because you don't get to see the body language. Written down more, you don't get to see any kind of body language, tone of voice. And then unaddressed documents like spam emails, billboards, magazine articles, etc. Now, if we have a look at the three common ones in business: email, SMS, and chat, right? It's extremely important that you don't go into loops around email, SMS, and chat when you should be going at least to a telephone, if not a video conference, if not to an in-face person. Assess what is your communication. If you want to be very effective in getting your ideas across, always go for the face-to-face or video conference as a minimum. Nonverbal communications, remember, smile, sit up front, take notes. Get rid of your phones and laptops when you're in meetings because they are distractions. Even if they are not turned on, they have a psychological barrier. Remember, not seemed engaged is very important. Not seeming engaged. You might say you're fully engaged in meetings and in trainings and things like that, but if you've got devices open, if you're slouching and sitting in the back and kind of like waltz in and take the furthest seat away from the front, what is the perception that you're showing to other people? You might be very engaged. That might be your style, but the people around you will make their own decisions around your nonverbal communications. These have a huge impact with customers. And as we close, I'll finish with this by Maya Angelou. This lady's amazing. She's, been in movie, TV. She's since deceased, but she said this: I've learned that people forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but they'll never forget the way you made them feel. Just remember that in business, in life. This here, it often goes in my life, often my mind. How are you making this person feel? Are you belittling them? Are you building them up? Are you adding value to them, or are you pulling them down? People will never forget the way you made them feel. Okay, it's time to act. Complete the Metrics That Matter survey for this cohort. Review the assignments. It says posted within 24 hours. It's actually going to be posted in 5 minutes. I'm going to upload the recording from this morning's session. I'll upload first. The other one, it will take time to compile, but I'll put the assignment up there. The Metrics That Matter survey link is in there. Click it straight away. Get it done. Get it out of the way because it expires, that link. And then any Q&A, I'm going to take one question right now. So the first one off their mic to ask, I'll take that question. Otherwise, we'll have to move all questions across to the Facebook group.
Mark, it's Megan. If you could pick one of the books out of all of the ones that you've mentioned to start with, which one would you say?
The Hostage Negotiator.
Okay.
I think it'll have the biggest impact on every single conversation you have every day. But of course, if you want to further your career, you need to learn the public speaking ones. Awesome. That's my one question. Let's take the conversation back over to the other channel. I hope you found that helpful, that you learned a lot. I'm open to any kind of feedback that you might have. If you feel like I could add more content into communications or maybe do another course or another session in areas that I didn't cover, love to hear from you. Thank you so much for being on this first, call. I'm off to Business Application Summit in a few days, but then the following week we're back for the next cohort, and then we're pretty much going back to back as we go through the end of the month and into July with these. Once again, ask any questions you want in the Facebook group. So looking forward to carrying on this conversation with you. Hope you're going to have an awesome week, and ciao for now.